What is up, my friends? Happy Monday to you. Lauren Sisler here with AL.com. Going to talk a little Alabama football in this week's edition of SEC Insider, brought to you by All South Appliance Group. We appreciate our sponsors, been with us all season long. Awesome to have them. Of course, you can go check them out in their store. Lots of great sales and things going on right now, especially coming off the holidays. Why not revamp that kitchen of yours? Hey, I got Mike Rodak joining me now to talk a little Bama football. My friend Mike Rodak, I guess, made the trip to the Rose Bowl that was moved to Texas, right? So you just spent some time in Texas, and then you'll be off to the national championship game. So a little bit of a different experience, right? We were talking about that a little before we hit the broadcast. Not quite the same experience that us media folk are accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've seen Nick Saban in person since the Citrus Bowl last January. So it's been over a year now. And it's just, you go to the press box, sure, you're at the game, but other than, I mean, from the distance, from watching him in the press box through your binoculars or whatever, you don't really get up close and personal with anybody around the team. You're sitting in the press box and doing Zoom interviews, which theoretically you could do from anywhere across the globe. So it's definitely a little bit different, covering the game. And, there's a lot of events and stuff that go along with these playoff games that aren't happening this year. And it's a much shorter trip for these teams as well. I think typically they come in, 3, 4, 5 days in advance. In this case, it's like a normal road game where, they fly in 2 days before and just kind of go about things normally. There's not really a whole lot different about these playoff games than a regular season game at Arkansas. So that's just the way it is this year, and I'll have to see if it's any different next year.
Well, it's interesting, and traveling around covering various games for ESPN this year across the SEC and, of course, around the country, it's kind of been interesting. A lot of coaches have said that there's not a ton of positives that have come out of this pandemic, but there are a few, and some of the things in the way that they practice, how they've kind of scheduled things and repping things out. And then the other thing was the Zoom calls. I think the coaches have actually enjoyed the Zoom calls. It's been a little bit more convenient for everyone and not having to deal with the powers that be and us media folk piling into a room every week and doing our thing. But, I think if we had a choice to keep it like it is or go back to normal, I'd say a lot of people would prefer to go back to normal. All right, so Alabama got a win over Notre Dame, 31-14. I think the expectation was there that they would, take care of Notre Dame handily. That was kind of the narrative going into that football game. So now it's on to the national championship, right? When you look at this matchup, what we saw, Ohio State taking on Clemson, certainly kind of a unique challenge for Alabama. I kind of had posed the question going into this: who would you rather have? Would you rather have Clemson or Ohio State? And you look at two very explosive offenses in both of these teams. Both Alabama and Ohio State score more than 40 points a game. They rank in the top 5 or 6 in both total offense and scoring offense. So with that being said, what intrigues you most about this matchup that we're about to see unfold here on January 11th?
I think it's Justin Fields, and I didn't have a chance to watch most of that game because we were still, typing away on our keyboards in Dallas. But it really seems like he's a quarterback who's taken a step forward. And I mean, I don't know if there's some discussion about him going number 1 overall instead of Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if that will happen. I think that's a little bit far-fetched. But, I think Alabama fans coming into last weekend would have thought, the quarterback they really didn't want to face was Trevor Lawrence. And that still might be true. But Justin Fields made a case in that game that he's very dangerous and can certainly do a lot against this Alabama defense. And you look at the Florida game, you look at the Ole Miss game, we've talked about it a million times, but, better quarterbacks can certainly put up numbers against this Alabama defense. And it's been a small sample size for Ohio State this year, and that's part of the intrigue, is that you just don't quite know what they are compared to some other teams that have played more games. But it seems like they're peaking at the right time offensively. It's not just Fields, sure, it's Trey Sermon in the backfield as well. He's gained, I think it's over 500 yards the last couple of games. So it's an offense that I don't know if it's as dangerous or more dangerous than Florida's, but it certainly seems like it's a little bit better than what we thought it was a month or two ago when they were struggling against Indiana and some of those Big Ten teams. Is it a better situation for Alabama to play Ohio State than Clemson? probably still, just because of the way Clemson's played against this team historically. But yeah, Ohio State, I think, certainly has a chance in this game, and it's obviously going to be the hardest game of the year for Alabama.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you bring up a great point with Justin Fields. Certainly kind of coming into his own. I know there was some, skepticism around his abilities. Obviously, he kind of fell off the Heisman radar, but magnificent performance there against Clemson. And, like you said, small sampling size. So I think it's certainly going to be interesting to see how things play out. Certainly looking forward to it. I think that if you could have a national championship and put two of the best teams on the big stage, I think that we certainly have come as close to doing that as possible with these two teams. So next question for you. Steve Sarkisian, the offensive coordinator for Alabama, is on his way to Texas. And no, he's not staying in Dallas where he played the playoff. He's actually headed to Texas to be the head football coach, right? So kind of interesting how that all unfolded, because he literally, I guess news came down that Tom Herman was no longer going to be the head coach. And within 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, Sarkisian got his introductory press conference, which he was able to do virtually via Zoom. So that was kind of interesting. But Sark did say, I made a commitment to Coach Saban and these players to see that through in the championship game. And then directly after that, I'll be in Austin. So it's kind of where we're at right now. Just wanted to get your thoughts on Sarkisian leaving Alabama, what this kind of means heading into the national championship game, and the hole that will have to be filled at the offensive coordinator position.
Yeah, obviously that was a situation where I think Texas had their guy in mind, and if they could get him, they could get him, and they did. But if not, then obviously they're going to keep Tom Herman. So, not the greatest situation for Herman, kind of having to stick around there for longer than I think a lot of coaches would. And obviously, if you're getting fired, I think you want to get fired earlier and have some more opportunities elsewhere. But that's football, and he's still getting paid, so it's going to be all right for him. But as far as Alabama replacing Sark and just what it means, I think it starts with the recruiting aspect for me, just because of how well they've recruited Texas these past couple years, especially this current cycle, 2021, getting 2 of the top 4 recruits in Texas, Tommy Brockemeyer and Kamar Wheaton. And you're talking about some stiff competition now that you have a guy who knows you very well, and him, and Sark, who's going to be recruiting Texas and trying to win back that state from Alabama and A&M and some other schools that have really made some inroads there. So that's going to be a battle. And whether Sark brings guys along to help him recruit, I think is the biggest question right now. And Jeff Banks, the special teams coordinator and tight ends coach for Alabama, is the guy with the deepest roots in that state. And, name, I think if you're talking about which coaches that Sark could bring along, he's probably on the top of that list. Carl Scott as well, the cornerbacks coach, has some ties to Texas. And those 2 coaches have been, pretty successful for Alabama in that state. They've recruited all the guys from Texas. So that's going to be the thing to watch the next couple of days, is just how that situation unfolds. And obviously Nick Saban in the past has had some problems with other coaches taking his assistants along, and he's vocalized it too with Kirby Smart and Jeremy Pruitt, basically saying that some guys just don't understand. You can't take their coaches along and destroy what he built, I think is the way he put it in that documentary a couple of years ago. So that's the biggest intriguing thing to me. But it raises the question of who replaces him at Alabama. And I think there's a report this morning from Fox Sports that a couple NFL guys, Adam Gase from the Jets and Bill O'Brien from the Texans, who have been fired this year, could be candidates. And other people have discussed Tom Herman as a potential candidate after being fired at Texas and having the offensive background. So, naturally it's a deep pool of candidates. It's a pretty attractive job. It pays as well as any assistant coaching job in the country. I think the question for Alabama is just how do you recreate the success of this past season's offense, this current season's offense next year, when a lot of players are going to be gone and you're dealing with a very talented pool of young players, but also a very unproven pool.
Yeah, all really great points and great insight on that coaching search and sort of how that will unfold. So certainly we'll have some stuff to talk about when this college football season is over, as it turns into 2021 and what that's going to look like. And now that leads me to my last question. The Heisman Trophy will be awarded. Who's going to take it home? And Mac Jones is one of those. And I want to play this clip from the press conference. I guess he was asked about this. I believe this was after the college football playoff.
Yes.
Was asked how he was going to, I guess if he could picture himself being out there. I'll let you listen to this. It's kind of funny, but he's definitely played into Nick Saban. He's learned a lot from Nick Saban in his time here. Let's just say that.
Your thoughts as you look to that ceremony, and how much does it mean to be a part of, and how much thought have you given or will you give to an acceptance speech in terms of writing it in the next few days?
That's a rat poison question. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, we were really focused on this game, which I'm really proud of everybody just locking into this. And we've won a lot of games, and a lot of people are gonna get awards. So it's just part of the team effort. And then obviously the most important thing is not letting that be a distraction for our next game, because the next game is the most important game, and that's where we want to be. And we're finally here, and we got to score one more point than the other teams.
Rat poison. Oh, they were having fun with that one. Love it. So the Heisman Trophy ceremony will go down, I guess, tomorrow, right? Tomorrow at 6 o'clock Central Time. And, of course, the candidates, or the finalists, I should say, you've got Mac Jones, DeVonta Smith, you've got Kyle Trask, Trevor Lawrence. Just kind of want to get your thoughts. If you had a chance to weigh in. Are you a Heisman voter, by the way?
Not yet.
Not
maybe
yet.
one day, but still,
Okay.
I'm currently new to this game.
So if you had the opportunity to put in a vote, who would it have been for?
I think it would be DeVonta Smith, and I think I would be surprised at this point if the award is not given to DeVonta Smith. And, this past game doesn't count. The voting had already closed before the Rose Bowl, but I think it really reaffirmed the selection for a lot of people, and I do think a lot of people voted for DeVonta Smith. I talked to Eric Crouch, who he was the 2001 Heisman winner, so he has a vote, and he didn't say for sure, but just reading between the lines from talking to him, it really sounded like DeVonta was his guy. And I think when people look at the Alabama offense and how successful it was, I think they're going to choose between Mac and DeVonta, and I think a lot of people will probably side with DeVonta in being the more important, the more talented player. And that's not a knock against Mac Jones. I think DeVonta Smith is just that good. And again, at this point, I'd be surprised if it's not him. But I think the tough part for me is just seeing, the schedule this year, having the Heisman ceremony the week of the national championship, knowing there's probably a good chance that the players in the national championship are probably going to be Heisman finalists. In a normal year, that's not the case. I mean, it's in the middle of December. There's kind of that dead period in between the conference championships and then bowl season. It makes it a tough situation for Mac and for DeVonta and other guys to answer questions, just because they're so focused on, like I said, the most important, the toughest game of the season. But years from now, I'm sure that they would love to look back and say that they appreciated this moment and the recognition that they got for being, Heisman finalist or a Heisman winner. But it's like they have to deflect those questions right now because there's something more important. I don't think that's right for those players. I don't know why we can't have this Heisman ceremony next week.
That was exactly my thought process there. Right. I literally was thinking the same thing. It just, at this point, it's already, the votes are already in. We already know what's happening. I would love to know what the thought process in that was. And, we're in a year where everything has been shuffled around so much. Why this time does it really matter?
Right. And I can understand why there's no ceremony in New York, why their family's not around. DeVonta said his family's not going to be there. He wants to stay safe with COVID. But it's just one of those things where if they just treat this as a 10-minute segment of their life where they have to answer a few questions on TV, and it's almost an inconvenience to them because they're getting ready for a big game, years from now, they're going to regret that, because this is a huge moment in their lives and a chance to celebrate something big that they've done. And I hope it just doesn't pass by in a blink of an eye for them.
Yep. I'm with Marquita Evett here. She said it should be the following week. No doubt about it. Yeah, I think you're right. It just seems weird. There's a lot of questions about the season, put in an asterisk beside it. But when you look at the body of work from these young men and what they've done, proven themselves, and honestly, in a year that's been more challenging than unlike any other, of anything, put 10 asterisks beside it and say, hey, these guys overcame a lot and they did it with such grace and such poise. But I'm like you. It's like you want to be able to enjoy this moment, and it seems like it's making it a little bit more difficult for those guys that aren't able to truly relish in it as they're preparing for the national championship. But hopefully they're doing it in their own way, and they might not be showing it outwardly, but hopefully they're enjoying it inwardly as the process unfolds. But Mike, we appreciate you as always. Such great insight. Appreciate the updates coming. Of course, we'll continue to track the national championship game as we get closer. Of course, replacing Steve Sarkisian will be a big one. And of course, we'll have our eyes on the Heisman Trophy ceremony and whatever that looks like and who ends up being named the Heisman Trophy winner. So appreciate it. And we also appreciate our sponsor, All South Appliance. Appreciate you all season long. You can check them out, myallsouth.com or any one of their showrooms across Alabama, Tennessee, and Florida.